Salut everyone! I am officially back! So I took a little bit of time off this year for some personal reasons I will not bore you with, but I'm back and I'm super excited to be creating content again for you on YouTube and on my blog. So I'm starting off my hiatus dedicated to the 5 things I learned in France while I wasn't YouTubing. As you guys know, my channel is called Unintentionally Frenchified. I have officially lived in France for 9 years. Woo-hoo! I celebrated my 9-year anniversary in October, and I often feel like a veteran. Like I've lived in France for so long that nothing surprises me. I do lots of French things, and I just feel like a very Frenchified version of myself. But every once in a while, something happens, and I'm shocked that I had no idea that that's how things were done in France. When I first moved to France, I lived in this little town called Poitiers that's in the southwest side of France, and I was working in this town called Loudun, which is a really tiny town by Poitiers, and I had to take the bus between. And so I talked about the bus stop all the time. I'm going to the bus stop. And the bus stop in French is called l'arrêt de bus. And I was pronouncing it at that time, l'arrêt de bus. And l'arrêt is actually the word for fishbone. So I was actually telling people that I was going to the fishbone. I'm going to the fishbone. And everyone knew I meant that I was going to the bus. Nobody corrected me. And for literally years, instead of saying bus stop, I said fishbone. And so there are these moments where when someone corrects you finally and you're like, what? Or someone tells you something and you're like, wait, what? I've been, thinking or speaking or for the last 5 years that it was a certain way and it's actually not at all. And so I figured today I would dedicate some of the 5 things I've learned in this last year, in my 9-year anniversary. These things that I was like, wait, really? So are you ready? Because l'arrêt de bus was not the first one. Number 1 and number 2 are kind of similar. We have had a really big year of strikes and protests in France. And I think I've got as many crazy strike stories as you've got crazy boss stories. You can't live in France without just really being used to strikes and protests. And I always knew that protesting in France was legal. And I always appreciated the fact that in France, if you are unhappy about something, you are more than welcome to display your unhappiness while marching throughout the streets with other people who believe in your cause. What I didn't know is that you actually had to inform the government before you protest. I had this impression that it was spontaneous, that it was you wrote on Facebook that you were upset and then you went and protest. But actually, it's really organized. So for example, if I wanted to protest about something that I believed in, I don't know, a rise in pizza taxes that upset me, and I had 300 friends who believed in it too, we couldn't just go out tomorrow and march. We'd actually have to let the government know ahead of time. And what made me kind of think that that was funny was that, for example, if I wanted to protest against the government or against the police officers, they would still need to help me define a route within France. So if it was in Paris, like the streets that I wanted to walk down, they would have to be there to block off the traffic to make sure that I was safe, that the other protesters are safe, and that we were protesting in optimal conditions. And I didn't know that at all. So that was the first thing that I learned this year. The second thing that I learned was more related to strikes. I have lots of fun strike stories. I specifically remember a time I was taking a flight from Pau, a town in the southwest of France, all the way up to Paris, and we get to the airport and Air France is having a strike. And they say, but lucky you, the flight's still gonna leave, just delayed. So we take the flight, quick 15 minutes, it's those tiny like puddle jumper with 1 seat here and 1 seat here, and we land and we need someone to push the stairs up to the plane. And we get an announcement on the loudspeaker, and the people who are actually pushing the stairs have also gone on strike. So we sat in the flight for another 2 hours until someone would actually come push the stairs and open up so we could disembark. And then by the time that we get off the plane, the people that are supposed to take our luggage have been on strike as well. So I literally spent like 12 hours, an entire day, going from Paris to Pau because of a strike. So you can't ignore the strikes in Paris. They're everywhere. But what I've never experienced before and didn't know is that when you're really unhappy with something like the SNCF, which is the company that runs all of the trains in Paris. This year they were really upset with some changes in laws that were linked to their retirement, and they decided that they wanted to strike. And they decided that they wanted to strike for a long time. This wasn't going to be a 1 day or a 2 day or a 3 day. This was going to be months on end. And so they put out a strike calendar, and this calendar told you when they weren't going to be working. So you knew when to get reimbursed for your train tickets, when you needed to change travel plans, and literally for, I don't remember exactly how long, but let's say 2 months, there was strikes going on every other day. So that had never happened before. I didn't know that you could be so organized as well in strikes, and apparently you can. So the third one I'm actually not that surprised about. I'm not surprised that they do it, and I'm not surprised that I wasn't aware, because I am not a television girl or a radio. I've never owned a car in France. I don't go to the movies that often. I am a Netflix, Spotify, podcast kind of girl. And so I never really noticed that there is this cultural exception that they talk about in France for the media, all related to cultural things. And the idea behind it is that we don't want to lose the French culture. And obviously living in Europe, France is surrounded by lots of other different countries with their own culture and their own language. And you've got, things coming in from the US and things coming in from India and trends from Asia. And what they want to do is just make sure that they preserve the French culture. So if I owned a radio station, for example, 30% of what I was putting out there during the day would need to be French, and maybe French songs and a French history and French culture, and that goes all the way up to 80% during the night. And I'm not surprised I didn't know, as I said, because I don't listen to the radio, but I went to Quebec last year, and I learned all about the history of French Canada and the lengths they went to preserve their culture. And at the end of the day, they are from France, and so maybe it's not so surprising that the French are really focused on, and it's important for them to make sure that they don't get overrun by all of the different cultures they're surrounded with and all of the different cross-cultural and globalization that's happening today. The fourth one has to do with food, one of my favorite topics. I always think of France as the land of cheese. I think we all do. If you've ever been to France, it's really hard to miss the staples of French diet. We've got wine, we've got baguettes, we've got coffee, we've got cheese. But sometimes there are other things that are less obvious that we don't think of. And in France, what I never really thought of was yogurt. So in the US, where I grew up at least, yogurt was something you would have at breakfast. When I moved to France, I noticed that yogurt was something you could have at breakfast. It was something you could have at lunch, at dinner. It was a dessert. I feel like yogurt is a snack. Yogurt is pretty much a staple that you can have at any time of the day. Well, when I made this comment to a colleague of mine at work, because of course when you go to the canteen at our office, you have 3 different types of fromage blanc, which is like a yogurt, and then you've got 7 different flavors of yogurt with different companies and different brands. And so I made a comment, and so my colleague said, well, actually, it's kind of funny, but we produce more yogurt than we do cheese, not by a lot. And because we export cheese and France is known for cheese, we always consider France to be the land of cheese, but it also should be considered the land of yogurt. So I did a little bit of research. France actually produces 2.4 million tons of yogurt each year, and they also produce 9 million tons of cheese. So I'm not trying to say that France is not the land of cheese, but it could also be the land of yogurt. And I'm wondering if this new nickname might start trending. I am a huge believer in celebrating every opportunity, whether it's a Christmas holiday where 2 billion people are celebrating it, or whether we're celebrating the 100th day of school with 30 kindergartners for the first time. I love celebrating any occasion. So I'm really surprised that I didn't know about name days. Name days are dates within the year that are attributed to different saints. And if you were named after a saint, then you also get to celebrate the name day of your saint. So my name is Kate, but imagine that my parents had named me Catherine. That would mean that not only would I celebrate my birthday on March 9th, but I would also get to celebrate Saints' Day on November 25th. As I said, my name's Kate, and there's not a Saint Kate, so I won't be celebrating a name day. But I think this is the perfect opportunity to celebrate other people around you that you love that are named after saints. So that's a wrap on the 5 things that I learned this year that I was surprised about or shocked. If you've got anything that you want to share that you learned that surprised you, don't hesitate to put it in the comments below. I am creating new content on my blog as well every Monday. You can find the link below too. I'll be putting out videos once a month. Definitely hope to talk to you guys again soon. Ciao!